What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Reel Down. I'm your host, Jimmy Skinner. With me, as always, now, Mr. Garrett Johnson. See, I did it already.
What's
I pointed the
up?
wrong direction.
Yeah,
Man, I got it right all
you're
week.
already
last
messing it
week.
up.
Oh, well. Well, what's up? How you doing, man? How's work?
Just the same old, getting doing there as much as I can in as many hours of the day as I can.
Yeah, Garrett doesn't realize it yet, but his fishing career is going to be slowing down a lot with his new
Yeah,
job and life and being married. And get
yeah,
ready for
doing
it,
all the
buddy.
things at once.
Yeah. Well, you got a little announcement for yourself, don't you? You're working with another new company since last time we talked.
Yeah. So I started working with a rod company that I just picked up a couple of days ago. They're called Trica Rods. They kind of got me with that gimmicky kind of, I guess, Instagram targeted ad, and I tried a couple of their rods out, and I actually really like them. So,
And
uh,
they're not cheap rods.
no,
This is
they're
he says gimmicky,
on
and
the
most
high
time you
end.
think of like, cheap. They're freaking nice. And he's given up. Oh God, what were you using? Daiwa.
I use mainly the Mega Bass
Oh, that's
Levante
right.
series rods.
So if
Yeah,
you're replacing some Mega Bass rods, they gotta be pretty sweet.
yeah, they're pretty nice. I really
Yeah,
like them. They're super light and they're pretty sensitive.
yeah. Well, when you get a little more settled in with them, we'll have to get you to jump on with the Final Cast guys and tell them all about them because I know they haven't done one on that one.
Yeah, I'd be down.
Hell yeah. Well, real quick little house cleaning if the graphic got uploaded, and I don't think it did. I will find the information during the show, but just wanted to let everybody know that the Paddle and Fin Trail event is up on Tourney X, the one at Del Hollow, and you can go ahead
Sir.
and get signed up. Got a bunch of great sponsors working on getting the rest of the small details out, like rates and camping and stuff like that down there at Eastport with Richard and the family. But we're looking forward to it as always. I know there's a good bit of the hosts coming down. I think most of us are going to try and fish the tournament this year because there's always a complaint that we didn't get to compete against y'all, and I never thought anybody would actually want to because we mostly suck. Um, all our best anglers at Paddle and Fin never show up, so we get to change that though because Garrett's pretty good at Del Hollow.
I can be hit or miss, as we saw last year.
Yeah, he was hit and winning day one,
Yeah,
and missing and zeroed on day two, so he's not lying.
yeah.
We won't hold it
Both
against you
ends of
this year
that.
though. But yeah,
It'll be a good
so
time.
kind of continuing our preseason show setup. Last week, everybody, we had Steve Owens on, director for Bassmasters National Trail Series, the whole Kayak Nation over there. If you haven't listened to that one, go back. Lots of cool information on that one. Uh, some that had to do with the tournament world with them, and some that just had to do with a rig fishing. So some cool juice on that. Go check that out. But to continue on this week, we've got first time I've had him on. Been a long time since he's been on the show, but the man, like the head honcho, everybody knows him, Mr. AJ McWhorter with the Hobie Bass Open Series. What's up, brother?
What's up, guys? How y'all doing this evening?
Good, good.
Doing all
If you
right.
want some Del Hollow juice, this is the guy to go to.
I'm pretty miss or hit every once in a while. It's one of my favorite lakes in the entire country to be on. It is one of those places that you just kind of get that funny feeling fishing. You never know, the next cast could literally be the biggest smallmouth or even one of the biggest largemouth you've ever seen. And it's just a beautiful place, and it can fish a lot of different ways. So yeah, I enjoy being on Dale Hollow, but sometimes Dale Hollow doesn't enjoy me as well.
I've never got the enjoyable part. Like the beauty part, I've got to see it at like drastically different elevations, really low, super flooded, different times of the year. It's
Hmm.
always pretty, but that place and me just don't work well when it comes to fishing. And it's one of the places like I really, really try when I go. Like I don't like joke around, and I just can't figure that place out. I don't understand it.
It's
Like
your problem, man. You're
Garrett
just
told me
trying too
what to
hard.
do, and I went where Garrett told me to go and do it, and I still suck. Like, and then you ended up fishing there the next day and like did good in the tournament. Like I don't understand.
That's smallmouth fishing, man. I mean, they can, largemouth too can move, but like smallmouth are very finicky, and like it's one of those things. If you're on them on Friday, you cannot count on them on Saturday.
Unless you're Adam Reiser.
Unless and like you're in that same spot. Well, even Adam, I mean,
Yeah.
he's had some days that he's not proud of out there.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think his most consistent pattern are always greenfish.
Yeah.
Just because the smallmouth are the kind of that fool's gold, man. They draw you in, and you might even have that one that you catch, and it makes you keep chasing them all day. But they can be such a pain in the tail, man. But
It's such a gamble.
but I love them. So sometimes, but my best tournaments on Dale Hollow, except for a old school Bluegrass Yak Masters event many years ago. There's a good story about that event that Kurt Smits beat me on that right after he won the national championship. But that was my smallmouth trip. Every other time out there that I've done good in a tournament has been really focusing on largemouth. And from a tournament perspective, I mean, it's just, especially when conditions are tough, they're just a little bit more reliable. And, I love smallmouth. I'll chase them, but if there's money on the line, I'm going to go with old reliable.
That's right.
And I think that's how most of the checks get cashed out there is on those greenfish.
Yeah, and what's surprising to me about that is the way the boat world has their weird slot limit out there. It's like I've always thought that the smallmouth would play more in the kayak tournaments, but like AJ's saying, they're just hard to get on out there, and then hard to rely on when you do find them.
But if you do, and it's a 1-day 5-fish tournament, you can blow it out of the water. And that we saw that this year with the Tennessee Bass and the CTKA and the Bluegrass Kayak Angler combination. Old buddy just put them on it. And, I did okay in that event, but I was not even in the same ballpark as he was. And that's the thing. I mean, if you can get on them and find them, it's hard to compete with. And so it's like that's that home run ball, that Hail Mary. But it can be feast or famine. But spring's a little different animal out there. And, you guys are there at a really good time if the water plays out. I mean, I hope that my schedule plays out, that I can maybe squeeze up there and be a part of that. It's a really cool event you guys do. And it's an awesome time of year on, like I said, one of my favorite lakes. So just a couple hours away from the house. So hopefully that weekend presents itself. It's kind of April's nuts for tournaments this year. You got
Amen.
So many. I mean, we get this gift of 5 weekends in April, but it's like everyone put all of their tournaments in that month. So it's just like,
I think KBF literally is fishing every
all
weekend
5
in April or something, except for Easter. So it's like,
that's
stacking
a lot.
them up.
And we're at the beginning and the end, probably 2 of our most regionally impactful events to the Southeast. And, kind of hitting those 2 lakes at a really good time frame, in my opinion. It's similar to when we were at Santee last year and on the first weekend of April, but it's one of those times, like any lake, if the weather's right and things are going that way, like the week before, it could be spectacular. And then for us to go to Seminole at the end of April, that's way different than we've ever been there before. And I just think it's going to be a smash fest, and there's going to be some awesome post spawners caught, which, in the kayak world, we love post spawn fish. They're the same length at 2 pounds less. So there are going to be a lot more gators out than February, but I think anybody that fishes in the South understands that when gators are around, the big bass are too. So, if you're not scared of gators, come on down to Seminole. It's going to be an awesome time.
You'd be surprised how many people that gators actually turn away. I didn't I don't know. I mean, 14-foot dinosaur with a lot of teeth. I understand, but I really didn't think that it would sway people from fishing. But I've had in the last week, 3 people told me no, I'm not going to Seminole again. There's just too many. I was like, what? All right. I haven't done Seminole. I did Lake Fork. They got plenty. And I mean, I live on Wheeler. Wheeler's got them. If you're getting back in the backwaters like I do, that's where they're all at. But well, man, we're kind of talking about your schedule. So for anybody that's listening to this show that doesn't know you, which is probably no one, give us a little rundown of who you are, obviously with Hobie, but outside of that, because you're an angler too. You compete in tournaments when you can and everything. But just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh yeah, well, I'm a Kentucky boy. I live in Tennessee now, but I gotta throw Kentucky out there every chance I get. And I had the opportunity to start a club with some great people in Kentucky. I kind of get fuzzy on the details, but I want to say that was around 12 years ago, maybe 11, and we started the Bluegrass Yak Masters. And it was at the time where clubs were just kind of popping off everywhere, and there wasn't a whole lot of guidance, and KBF was starting to get going. But like, we were all using rules from an organization called CATS down in Texas. So like, when we were drawing up our rules, we were looking at CATS for as an example of like what was right, wrong, or indifferent. And so but there was like 7 of us guys, and we all met at a little restaurant in Lexington, Kentucky called Winchell's, and we sat there and we drew up how we were going to make this club. And it was kind of really unique how it all came together, because I kind of went out and selected these folks that we'd all fish together, but we had such a good group of folks that had different opportunities. We had a banker, we had a lawyer, we had a printer, we had a couple guys that just had some time. We had some guys that were sponsored by other kayak brands. I was with Hobie, and we all just kind of came together, and we never really all saw eye to eye, but it kept us all kind of checked. And we really put a good product out there for the boys in Kentucky. And I'm really proud of what the Bluegrass Yak Masters were, the guys that helped me get it to what it was, and then the evolution to the Bluegrass Kayak Anglers, and now the club that's being run today. And really, it was never about it being my club. It was about being like the state's club. And it really broke my heart when I kind of left Kentucky and left the local grassroots opportunity, that no one was willing to step up and just continue. It wasn't even you just had to keep going. And the thing about being a tournament director, and everybody in this group knows, it's the ultimate sacrifice, and you sacrifice your time. And luckily, on a club level, it still allows us to compete with our friends and our guys, but not every club is okay with that. We're just fortunate in this part of the country that these guys allow us and want us to fish with them, and that we have people that can help judge fish when we're out there trying to wear 2 hats. But it was one of those things, and I'll never fault anybody for not wanting to be a tournament director, because trust me, I understand why you might not want to. I just hated that Kentucky didn't have what it had, and we grew every year. It was, we'd have like 5 or 6 guys that life changed, and then we'd have 10 to 15 new ones come in. And it was just so fun. We had such a great time doing that. And I'm so happy there's another club that's really running with the name. I'm really proud of what those guys are doing. And grassroots tournament fishing and organizations are the lifeblood of our sport. So I don't know if you guys, anybody watching, whenever you watch an award ceremony that we do for the BOS, if I've got an angler up there and they're sporting their jersey for their local club or a hat, or I know who they're kind of affiliated with, I always give them an opportunity to promote their local club, because if it wasn't for the local clubs, the opportunities for BOS and Bass and KBF on the high level, like, it just doesn't exist, because it takes an opportunity to get somebody into a kayak, comfortable with kayak fishing, and then willing to go and invest the kind of money that you guys have to invest to be a traveling angler to fish these national events. Even if you're just going to fish one, it's anywhere from a 500, if you're lucky, to $1,000+ investment for one tournament. And that's
Easy.
just a lot of money. That doesn't even count your boats or anything like that. So the grassroots are really what keep this thing going. And there's so many good clubs here in Tennessee that spread out all over the state and fish every body of water imaginable. And the guys up in Kentucky have an awesome schedule this year. So that's kind of my hope. You said that I'm a tournament. I used to be. I really did. I qualified for the 10 with KBF. I've had some good finishes in the national championships and the opens. I've won a few of the trail events, mostly in Kentucky and one in Alabama where I got on the luckiest ledge school of largemouth ever on Gunnersville, and it was like the most fun day of fishing I've ever had. It just happened to be in a tournament, but I don't get a chance to do that anymore. And every year I look at schedules and I'm like, man, I'd really like to go fish this and go fish that, and I want to, but there's a line, and I think as much as I've judged and the perception of directors and that they remember every single spot that someone ever caught a fish on at every lake they've ever judged, isn't necessarily a reality, but it is a perception and a stereotype that is kind of hard to navigate if someone doesn't know you or trust you or anything like that. And the last thing that I would ever want to do is put a black eye on an event because of something I did. And so it's kind of hard to straddle the fence right now. So I really appreciate the local stuff that the Tennessee bass stuff is, Steve and Daniel have just done an amazing job with that. It's like a national feel at a local lake. They've killed it. And then just all the local clubs here. And like one day I can go fish CTKA on Dale Hollow, and the next weekend I can be fishing Norris. The next weekend I can be fishing Chick. Like it's just, or reality is I look at everybody fishing all of those places every weekend and wish that I could. So,
Yeah.
it's a good thing down here. I do have a couple events that I hope to make. There is a Tennessee bass on Chickamauga. I've got a place on Chickamauga. Hopefully it's done by then. So I'd like to actually stay at my place and fish the lake that I fish like 3 times a year. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And then
I'll see you out there on that one.
Oh, there you go, man. It was good. I don't get to fish the championship on Gunnersville. I've got awesome plans that weekend, and it just happened to be a bad weekend. And I am upset about that because I was like, if I do good at Chick and I've got a top 10 from Dale, then, I might kind of mess around and like act like I might be in the running for Angler of the Year for a couple events, just to keep things exciting. Because they've got that river event in the summer on the French Broad and Holston.
Yeah, that one's gonna be fun.
And I'm an old school river addict, so like my start to kayak fishing was not tournaments. It wasn't even lakes. It was literally floating down Elkhorn Creek in central Kentucky, floating down Green River in south central Kentucky. I kind of cut my teeth with my dad on a place called Stoner Creek in Bourbon County. And those are places that are like near and dear to my heart. And, then a group of guys and we used to go camp at New River every summer, and we'd spend a week there. And a kayak was always a vessel to get to the next smallmouth hole for me. And so it like evolved. And like I started kayak fishing. Actually, like I bought my first kayak. It was, I was 16. And they were not fishing kayaks back then. My first boat was a sit inside. It was an Old Town Otter 9.8.
I actually know what that is.
10-foot boat.
Yeah. And I used it one time. And I was like, no. I was like, that's horrible. And that boat was never designed for what I was doing with it. But then I went and bought a sit on top, and it had fishing in the name. It was like a Pelican something. And like, it was okay. But by then the guy that I like bought a boat with, he's like, nah, this isn't for me, man. So like I was a solo kayaker at 16, and just like, it's a little intimidating. And so I kind of got out of it for a couple years, and then got back in, and I've never really looked back. My first like real fishing kayak was a Perception Pescador 10.0. It was
Yeah, it's a good little boat.
fire engine red, man. It was
Yeah.
red is my least favorite color, and I had a red truck and a red kayak, but I was getting after it. And I
I'll
went
die
all over
before
the
I wear
place.
red.
I don't own red, but I had, you know, it's funny that my two favorite things were red. But no, that's kind of how I got started with it. You know, and the club like took an opportunity for me to go fish smaller lakes, and then the club grew and we had to go to bigger lakes. And you know, I had been taking trips with friends with boats, so I was growing. You know, I worked in the fishing industry from you know, from 19 till now. So you know, I'd always had people that wanted to
It's a
go
good bit.
fishing or had boats, and I've kind of done it all on the professional side. But you know, it's been fun to kind of be in the kayak specific and kayak fishing side for an official capacity 10 years now as a regional sales rep with Hobie, and in their marketing department as it pertains to BOS and some other stuff.
That's crazy, man. That's the first time I've got to hear like your backstory. I don't know if you know you've had it on any other shows, but it's really cool that you were ate up with it. You know, way back. I mean, we always talk about like the OGs, and most of them are like, oh, you know, in 2015. You went back a little further than that, man. You've been in it for a hot minute.
Those guys, those OGs though, like they were doing things before I even knew there were things. Some of those guys,
Yeah,
you know, it's like before there were like message boards and like before Facebook got like big. It's like how do you know what other people are doing unless you just like run into them somewhere? And it's kind of crazy how all involved we are in what other people are doing now because of how technology and media has evolved. But back then it was always like, what did you come up with on your own? What did you learn at a tackle store? Or what did you see when you were out on the water? And, you know, for me, I'm always in my own head a lot. So like
amen.
I was a waiter,
Hmm.
like I was waiting waters, and I'm sitting here like thinking about the hole that I just fished an hour ago, but I'm like 4 holes up the river, and I'm like, man, I really want to go back to that hole, but like my truck's on the other side. And so you start thinking like, what can I do to help fish these holes better? And then it's like, well, what can I do to bring an extra rod or three? What can I do to bring more gear? And so I turned into like a fanny pack angler that took 2 rods with me and like 3 bottles of water to, you know, putting stuff in a homemade crate in the back of my sit on top. And then like, I'll be honest, guys, like I kind of like, I liked it, but it was like, man, something's not right. Like I get this boat,
Hmm.
I'm covering way more miles, but I'm not catching the fish I used to. And what I realized is like I changed my positioning of my fishing because I was floating downstream instead of fishing upstream. And then I go, and so I'm like, man, there's just got to be a better way. And then I literally, like within 2 weeks of me deciding that there's a better way, I walk into a local store in Lexington. They don't sell Hobie anymore, but they've been there forever. J&H Landmark, and
Hmm.
um, they had an Outback and a Pro Angler on the floor. And I was thinking like, oh my gosh, there it is. Hadn't ever seen
Yeah.
one before. I hadn't seen Hank Parker doing his thing. Hadn't even seen Tim Farmer for the local guys in Kentucky. Seen him. I didn't know. And like, I look at this drive and I'm like, oh my gosh, it comes in and out. It's perfect for rivers and creeks. And I was like, oh my gosh, if you put 1 foot forward, these fins tuck up against the bottom of the hole. I was like, this boat is literally made for creek fishing. And that's literally the first thing I thought. And it's funny because that's the first thing I thought. But everybody I've ever talked to about a Hobie kayak, the first thing they say is, "Oh, you can't use that in shallow water." And so it's like it's been
Watch
my
me. Yeah.
lifelong career through Hobie to disprove the myth that this isn't something that can work on creeks and rivers. Now I understand that every river is different and that certain Hobies aren't ideal for certain situations. And I'm not saying that the best riverboat ever is 150 pounds with a hole in the middle of it. That's not what I'm saying. But for me, I needed to face upstream and hold myself in current and still make the perfect cast. And that boat allowed me to do it. And then when I was done doing that, I could turn it around, float down river, pull the drive, grab my paddle through class 2, class 3, depending on which river I'm in, and put the dry back in, eddy out, turn around, hit that next seam. And it completely changed the way that I fished on rivers. It completely changed everything for me. It turned into a career to be able to represent Hobie and grow the sport under the Hobie name, all because, someone, well, really it was a rep that I met a rep at a boat show. And that created a life. I was working for Backwater Outfitters. They were there representing J&H, and I went there and we talked on a slow Friday night, and that turned into a lifelong friendship and a couple job opportunities. It's been a fun process. It's evolved a lot. It's gone in directions I would have never imagined. But at the end of the day, looking back on the beginnings and the path really allows me to appreciate the road that I've been on. And I've been with a lot of people, and I'm very fortunate that I get to sit up here and I'm perceived as the face. But if it wasn't for so many other people along the way, and currently my right-hand man, Steve Fields, these things just wouldn't have come together the way that they have. And ultimately the support of Hobie all along the way, and the support of the anglers, is really why the BOS has the success that it does. And I'm very grateful that people keep coming and showing up and wanting to fish for more money on big bodies of water that have amazing potential, and sometimes gators. But that's it. I kind of always looked at, as a competitive angler, I always looked at, what do I want to be doing? And I kind of feel like I've created something that is something that I wanted to do and wanted to be doing. And I'm very appreciative that other folks saw it in a similar way that I and others have helped design it to be. And for a lot of people, it's their favorite national trail, and it's the one that they put the most in. And I, as a representative of the brand, but also personally, on just a personal man-to-man or female angler, like, I couldn't appreciate the folks that go and invest in these series anymore. It's amazing what y'all do time and time again, once a month, sometimes twice a month. It's crazy. The things that some kayak anglers do now blow my mind.
Yeah,
like they're gone for 2 weeks and they don't never slept in a bed the whole time. Like it's just
sleeping
wild.
in their trucks and camping,
but they love it, man. And the passion that these people pour out is what really motivates me when things get tough, or when you get tired, or start feeling burnout or anything like that. You roll up into an event and you see everybody and their smiles, and they're so dang happy, man. And that's intoxicating, and it's just hard to not want to do your best for people like that.
For sure, man.
And I think you've done a good job with that. We'll get into that later, but I think you've done a good job with that, with some of the changes with the registration and stuff you guys have implemented this season. With
we're gonna get into that.
Yeah,
we're gonna let him hit on all that. Figure we get all the fun stuff out, and then we'll let him talk about all the changes.
Yeah, but, really loosen me up for you guys, hammer me down.
Huh? Yeah. So just because we're kind of already talking about it, tell us a little more, where the Hobie BOS started, when and why you started it, through the opens, and just what led to you continuing to just keep stepping it up the way you have, just wherever you want to start with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, my first year with Hobie, it's all fuzzy because I'm like 36 now, so I'm allowed to forget stuff. But like, it was like my very first ICAST, which was a really popular industry show for kayaks. And I was meeting some of my marketing colleagues, and I was just like, hey guys, like, there's an opportunity for this. And I was like pitching this event on Kentucky Lake, back when Kentucky Lake was just smoking
on fire.
And they were like, okay. So it all kind of came together last minute for the first one. And it was called the Hobie Bass Open and Fun Fest or something. Hobie Bass Open. Yeah. Hobie Bass Open and Fishing Fun Fest is what it was called. And
you should have kept that name. Yeah.
And so it was a full-on event, man. We had We had dealer support. We had 2 days of consumer demos at the beach at Kentucky Dam Marina. We had 30 anglers. Technically, I think we had 29, but like 3 of the staff fished. So we broke 30, but we didn't even market it. It was like a soft launch. So we kind of understood a little bit better, and it's a good thing because we brought in a Hobie, at the time, a Hobie friend, but he was a saltwater judge. We were putting SD cards in Ziploc bags and judging fish. And that's how things were done back then. There weren't
so cool.
other opportunities. And, it's funny because those 30 people, you do I think we did like 3 fish each day or something. And it took like 4 hours to judge all these pictures. And so it allowed us to evolve before we really even presented ourselves to the marketplace. And then like the next year we had like 70 something. The next year we had like 100 something. And we did this for like 4 or 5 years. Once again, I'm a little fuzzy because it all kind of blends in. But we got it up to, I want to say like 130 anglers. And, Hobie was really, back then, they were investing in a lot of events. And there were some great events out there. There was oh my gosh, he's going to kill me if he's watching this. It was up on St. Clair, and it's like the Border City Classic, I think is what they called it. But it was the first day of the smallmouth opener in Canada, on Lake St. Clair. So like you can fish year round on the US side, but it's like the 4th Saturday in April or 4th Saturday in June is the first day you're allowed to target smallmouth on St. Clair. So they had a tournament there every year, and it was awesome. And Hobie supported that. One of my buddies, Rich Offner, ran that. But he was kind of looking to maybe change or do what. And there was a few other things. And we kind of just took like 4 events that first year that were already existing in the market, and we put them under our wing as the Hobie BOS Open Series. And we had a West Coast event that was already going on. There was the Border City Classic. There was the Kentucky Lake event. We also went to Gunnersville that year in like October. And then I'm trying to think of what the other event was. So we took over. One of my great friends, Cody Prather, used to run the original Tournament of Champions. He was the last director and owner of it. It went through a few different hands and plenty of drama, but he was the last one. And that was the annual event on Lake Fork, the TOC. And that was one of my favorite events back then. I'm going to kind of sidetrack real quick because that event was a way that all the Texas guys that like qualified fishing Texas stuff all year, they got all these other clubs from all over the country that qualified through their clubs to come down on like one of their lakes and either donate or win. And it was like one of the first like real like conglomerates of a wide variety of people. And it allowed you to kind of qualify just through your own club. And it was really, really cool.
That's awesome.
What that event was, and it evolved, and it really, I mean, it could have been something spectacular the way that Cody was running it, but he wanted to see kind of the TOC grow into something a little different, and was like, we're just going to let it kind of float into the BOS. And so we went to Lake Fork. We had a West Coast event. We had Lake St. Clair. We had Kentucky Lake. And then we had Gunnersville. And those were the opens. Those were all 2-day events. And that first year, we were trying to kind of figure out what the market really needed. And so we also ran 11 one-day tournaments called satellites. And we had satellites. We kind of partnered with local clubs, or I ran a few of them that we strategically placed but didn't have a local club. And fellas, let me tell you, like, those flopped. No one remembers how awful the satellites did. And like, it wasn't, it was tough to understand why, because in most of them we were partnering with local club events and they were blowing out their numbers, and we were like not even half of that. And I think we might have just been a little before our time on the old partnership between like clubs, but I will give a big shout out. The guys in Colorado had our biggest satellite event that year, and those guys did a great job. And it was one of the hardest things when we restructured the next year, is that we knew that we couldn't really ever take the BOS back to that region because they just don't have the lakes and the size of lakes and the support outside of the anglers, the support that we need when we go into an area to run an event.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But we had events that year that only had like 3 people in them, and the winner of every one of those satellite events went to the TOC that year on Lake Ouachita in Arkansas. And so that's kind of how it all played together. And a little tie from that first year to this year is we did do a satellite event on the Harris Chain of Lakes. I want to say we had like 25 people there. Jason Broach won it, but he caught a 25.5-incher there.
God.
Yeah. So
donkeys.
there's when you're judging fish and you see a 25.5-incher land on the board, you just take more time on that fish. You admire it. You take a step back. But for anybody that's ever
getting to judge that fish,
I know. For anybody that ever wants to go back and do some history in the Hobie Bass Open, all those events are on iAngler. So we use a tournament app called iAngler. iAngler is still used. It's still around. Michael Christopher owns it. He is an amazing person, and really appreciate him working with us because he stepped in. We were ready to go to an app before Dwayne was ready for us to go to an app, and so we stepped in with iAngler for many years, and then had to kind of take our opportunity to go to Tourney X when we did. And obviously, Dwayne and I have a great relationship, and he's done a tremendous amount for the sport with his involvement with Tourney X and everything that he's done there. So, but I would definitely, with going into the history, I can't really not give a shout out to Michael Christopher for what he's done. And, as we went from that first season, the next year we realized that our bread and butter in this series is about putting on a show for 2 days, and no matter where these anglers go, they're going to get a Hobie experience. And we, in the early days, we had, we put pizza out there for every event. We did a lot of different things. It's all right, man. Dogs are dogs sometimes. But we did a lot of different things because we always wanted to kind of focus the experience part of the event, because previously only 10% of the field goes home with money, and maybe another 10 or 20% goes home with prizes. So what are you doing to the majority of the anglers to get them to come back and want to feel motivated to come back? So we really put a lot of effort into that and really tried to make the events as special as possible. And we did that by having a fairly large staff and having that personal feel that you felt like you're actually working with and communicating with and getting to know somebody with Hobie, which is kind of a cool thing from a branded event series. People see Hobie so many different ways. So to get to interact with a representative of Hobie, you hear about people's like childhood memories of sailing, or how they got into kayak fishing because seeing Hank Parker, just whatever someone's story is, they share that in those moments. So it's really cool. And we had a lot of people that came to these events that aren't competitive anglers. They just wanted to support what we were doing, and they had a passion for the brand. And I think that was a really important part to our early numbers, is the folks that really just showed up to support. They didn't show up because they had any thought that they were going to catch a single fish or even a limit. And I think that was one of the most special things in the beginning, is it really wasn't built around being a high level competition originally, especially with the single event on Kentucky Lake. It was more of a get together that had some incentives. World qualifications were a big part of the event in the series. So people would travel from all over, really just to qualify for worlds. Everything else was a bonus. So that's really kind of how it got. Now then, once we decided that the 2-day events were our thing, it was then just allowing me to be strategic about where we went, time of year, things like that, and developing the relationships with people, to get us there and help support the series in the ways that we as an organization need it to go to these places. And that's been kind of where we've gone, and we've evolved. We've changed our numbers a couple times. We've had one more or one less. We came really close to having 12 events this year. I had 3 other events lined up. Well, we were going to kind of regionalize it. But we just, there was just a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, and we just decided to keep the structure that we had, and then kind of evolve some of the changes within the structure that we have. And we landed with 9 events and the TOC. So 10 events. And then new to Hobie is our college series. So that's kind of the hardest thing that I've ever done is to try to start a college series, because you're literally building it from nothing.
Yeah.
There's like 3 schools that are like, we want to do this. And you're like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, but you're actually going to show up, right? And they're like, yeah. And man, these schools, these guys have shown up and
that's awesome,
blown it away. But it's just a few schools right now. So it's like, well, all right, we're in our 2nd year. How do we get more schools involved? How do we take that next step? And this year we're going to actually kind of have some of the college events are going to kind of coincide with the BOS event. So they're actually going to be there too. And I think that's going to help create more exposure for them. It's going to allow some of them to fish both events, where they, maybe they wouldn't have been able to if their school needed them somewhere, whatever the situation.
Yeah,
so
right.
we're going to, just like we did with the original start of this, we're going to continue to kind of evolve the college series to what it needs for it to grow. And it might not be that way next year, and it probably won't be that way, multiple years down the road. But right now we need to kind of do some things that pump some life into it and get more eyes on it, and hopefully get more schools out there, because, a lot of people don't realize these colleges, some of them have huge teams, but like only like 8 of those dudes get to go and fish the tournament.
There's only so many boats.
There's only so many boats. And so like, that's kind of the beauty about the kayak thing.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously we all know that it's less than a boat, but you can put 4 of them on a trailer and all hop into a Explorer or a truck, and you guys are going fishing, and those are guys that weren't before. And some of these kids are getting scholarships to go kayak fish for a school. It's crazy.
Wow.
And to feel like we can grow it into more is something that we're really trying to do, and hoping that we can do what we need to do to get it there. Because the schools that are in, big shout out to Campbellsville University in Kentucky and Carson Newman University in East Tennessee. They've done it. They've invested. They've bought in. Their anglers have bought in, and it's been amazing to watch them. I can't wait to see more folks get involved at that age, because that's always going to push more folks into what the opens are and what they're going to be. A lot of people, you hear all this pro talk and things like that. And a lot of people have asked me about that. I've had plans for a pro series for years. I just don't think that we're really there to sustain it right now. And I think that we as a sport have a long way to go. And that's not just anglers, that's organizations. Until I can put a few boats on the water and figure out how to record some people live and have an opportunity to stream it, I'm not going to charge people thousands of dollars for entries and have huge payouts and have 3-day events with maybe 2 days of pre-fishing and random stuff like that. It's like we have a lot of ideas, but I think the most important thing is we take it step by step and try to grow in the right ways at the right time, and let things grow around us too. And that's, I'm not saying that we're ever going to have a pro series, but I think that one day there'll be an opportunity there. But I think it needs to be a pro series, not just a pro kayak series. And I think if folks know what professional means, because we watch it and we look at it, and I feel like, once the money's there, once the anglers are at that point, once the organizations are at that point, I feel like there's going to be an opportunity for there to be some sort of professional
Next
level.
level.
But I that's a whole new conversation. That's like having
I think we're still like in the process of laying the foundation for something like that. Like, I don't think
And stepping back to what you were saying with the college, like that's another step to that. It's just more exposure on a different level, and something that I think is going to just kind of go with helping your college series continue to grow. Is like there's guys out there doing the same pioneering to get this in high schools. Like Freddie Garza was doing it down in Georgia, him and his wife. And it's appealing because there's a lot of schools that can't afford, like my one of my good friends is the captain of his kids fishing team, and they were like, "You will pay for the jerseys, but that's it." So it's like he's using his boat, like their fuel money, like and that is what I feel like keeps a lot of these smaller colleges or a lot of the high schools out of it, and giving them that opportunity where you can be like, no, look, you can just spend this $2,000 twice, and you can pass them on, whatever. Yeah. And I know they were having some success with that, and I think that's going to continue as long as there's people like Freddie and them down there, and and you pushing it. And then I think that the college series, I think, could eventually be as crazy as the national kayak scene is right now, and then maybe that helps bring the right eyes and the money needed to make that elite level. I've said it for years. I can say that now finally because I've been doing this for years. I've been saying it since the national thing has been really going crazy, that I didn't think that it's ready for an like elite pro series or whatever. And it makes me happy to hear you say that, because you're one of the people pioneering all of this. You people like you and Steve and Chad, and don't you laugh. I hear you over there, Garrett. Don't laugh. But
I'm laughing.
I'm glad to hear that. Is it on your mind? Yes. Is it something you're working towards? Yes. But you're not there yet. You're not jumping the gun on it. And I know that probably hurt some people's feelings, because if you listen to the masses of the kayak world, they're like, oh, we're ready. We're professionals. Well, we need, just because you raise the entry doesn't change anything. Like the same amount of people are still watching. Like, but no, it's really cool to hear the way it came about, man, because I knew about the satellites. I've been around long enough to know about the satellite events and a couple of the opens, and it's crazy to see how it's evolved. And then there's been some huge jumps just in the last few years. That's if you take a step back and look back, it's just kind of crazy to think. Like I've been doing this since 17 or 18, and it was very, for me, still kind of grassrootsy feel. And then seemed like from 19 till now, it was just like boom, in your face. Kayak fishing is everywhere. Has it been? I mean, obviously, I know there's challenges. Has it, with the natural growth of kayak fishing in general? Was the progress of Hobie kind of just easy, or was it just always a struggle?
I think the timing was perfect. For one, I mean, I think, I think there was a huge opportunity for another kind of player to come into the scene when we did, and there was a lot of support for another group coming in, and so that was a good timing for us. But then, what kind of hurt is our second year or third year, COVID hit. But really, everyone looks at how that COVID had a real, I'm not going to say it had a positive impact, but we were able to evolve what we did, and the anglers were still super supportive of that. And so we had drive-through check-ins, and that year we only missed, because of the way the schedule played out and the way, like, what do they call it, like a lockdown or something?
Yeah, restrictions and all that.
So like, for 2 months, we only missed one tournament. And we were supposed to have a Lake Erie tournament in Erie, Pennsylvania. And, you know, we didn't end up going back there ever again, but we kind of subbed in a Susquehanna like in the summer, and we announced it with 3 weeks, and we had 117 people show up with 3 weeks notice. And like, but we restructured everything in our series. And I think that was when we realized that it's people come not just because of what we do, like pizza and stuff like that. They come because they really want to. They want to get away. They want to go fishing. They want to go to bucket list fisheries. And I think that's kind of part of the evolution of why we're kind of realizing, okay, to most people now, this is a very serious tournament series, and it's not coming for hangout and pizza on Friday night anymore. Now I'm a big fan of the pizza nights. You know, I'd get like 3 or 4 extra boxes myself. That would feed me the rest of the tournament weekend. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do.
Yeah, that's probably the most controversial change you guys have made this year is no pizza. Come on.
Which I'm going to side note there. If that's the most controversial change, you're doing just fine. If everybody's caught up on pizza, the rest of it is perfect.
Well, you know, it kind of was a tough thing because like some of our host communities were always sad to hear that we do pizza on Friday nights, because it takes away 200 people going and eating in their town. Yeah. And like we'd have people that would come, like more and more, there was like 10 boxes left and 20 boxes left. And like we were trying to give pizza away, and like there'd be some people that walk out on Friday night with like 5 boxes of pizza. And like that's great, and it's cool for them, and I really appreciate them helping us take that. But more and more people are wanting to get out of these meetings and go to the local bar, the grill, or this restaurant they'd heard about that they haven't got a chance. And that's really what bringing people into a community is all about, is allowing them to you know, and support the community. This community's invested into us. A lot of these places, you know, kind of roll out red carpets for us, and because we're a big deal when we come into town. And you know, when 20 guys have a table in the middle of a Mexican restaurant in Eufaula, Alabama, you know, people take notice of that. And like, there's, you know, people listen and learn, and you know, that's an opportunity for us to continue to make an impact on new people or communities that, you know, have a lot to say about our anglers and the people that represent our sport. So I think overall, and for us, you know, this year we're going to be down some staff members at events. So that was one thing that was like really like, okay, well, how do we manage that and do this and do that? So that was kind of an easy thing for us to navigate through, especially with how much leftover pizza there was last year. And they always be like, AJ, get less. And I do not buy less pizza. Like all right, so is there a box for every person? And then I start dwindling down from there. But yeah, it just became something that like, that didn't seem to be as important as it once was.
Yeah, I mean, and anytime I go travel to somewhere, I always am on like a side quest to find
the best eateries, man.
That
That's like, I could do a whole other podcast segment, like eating from different places around the country. Yeah. So we're starting to run short on your time, because I know you got a game to get to. But let's touch on it.
I mean, we got a little bit of time. You know, those 9 o'clock basketball games, they always start a little late anyway.
So. All right. Well, I'm sure this will give us plenty of time, because so everybody listening to this already knows that you and Hobie as an organization announced some changes for the upcoming season. We already had Steve to come on with Bassmaster to kind of talk about these changes and like how well y'all work together, and you know, him taking over and them kind of following suit, and you know, a lot of areas. But I want your take on why some of these rule changes are implemented. And Garrett, I'll let you take it away if you want to ask any certain ones, or if AJ just wants to run over them all. I'm sure Garrett's got it pulled up.
Yeah, I've got them all listed here, but
that's good. I do better when I'm asked about specific question. That's like a normal tournament director thing. You gotta ask me what you need.
So we already went over the pizza, so that's obviously a big.
I mean, I feel like there'd be a little more debate there. I'm sure I could strum up a guest real quick that'd be like, "What the fuck?"
So we got wait list option now.
Well, yeah. So
Registration.
while you're kind of looking for your first like rule question, I want one of the biggest things for us, like, most people before last year didn't realize that we had a max capacity of 200 anglers. So, we do that because go back to the angler experience aspect of it. And I've had the opportunity to fish a few kayak fishing tournaments that had way more than 200 anglers in it. And my experience was pretty awful. Not just off the water, but on it as well. Applications didn't work the way they needed to. Cell was issues. Driving was issues. Ramps was issues. Nothing happened quick. Like they were very challenging and frustrating experiences. And so I just kind of felt like there doesn't need to be more than 200. But, I'd never run a tournament with 200 people in it before. So it's like, well, that's just a kind of an arbitrary number that I'm just pulling out of my mind there. So that's one of the reasons we went to 225 this year, is because 200 worked. There weren't a lot of issues with 200. So let's take a
crowd
step.
the lake and stuff.
And most of our lakes can accommodate it pretty well, but there's always going to be, you can have a tournament with 50 dudes on it, and you're going to have ramps that you're going to be like, why is everybody here? Like, why are you all here? Is everyone here? Is this a shotgun start?
Here.
So, that doesn't, people are always going to put in at certain places and so, but either way, we wanted to upgrade that just a little bit, just to, kind of grow a little bit. And, our host communities love that. Hobie likes to see us grow. And, we wanted to put more people in our events if possible. So we went up to 225. Then we changed the cost a little bit. So every year we've raised our price of the opens from 200. Now we're at 295. So we've gone up $20 to $30 every year. This is the first year people have mentioned it that I've noticed. So it's kind of interesting, because it's like, is it because we got that close to 300, or is it just because it just happened to be a $30 delta? But even like seeing some people post, like they didn't realize that our entry fees were $265 last year. They were complaining about how expensive we were, but they didn't come to a single event last year. And the last time they fished a tournament was like $200. So, what we allow ourselves to do there is we put a little bit more money back in the TOC. And we're paying out more. So we're paying out, it's either $15 or $20 more a person in the event.
Awesome.
And we switched to 15% instead of 10%. So what that allowed us to do is it allowed us to keep the high end of our entry fees high, but instead of just paying out 20 people in a 200 person event, we're paying out 30 people. So 30 people are going to go in with money instead of 20 people. So, and no one's going to feel like, man, like I didn't really win that much money. Like we've all fished some of the other events where like they pay out really far, and you're like, oh, cool, I got like $5 above my entry fee.
I got lunch for tomorrow or something.
And so like that's never been my intention, and it's not going to be that this year as well. So we're paying out more people. We're building the TOC a little bit more, and that was one of the big. But also with the entry fee being a little higher, and changing our refund policy, kind of made people more accountable for their investment. We'll still refund your money within 2 weeks of the event. It's 70%, no matter what. If you've paid your entry and you request a refund, you can get 70% of it back. But that's like $95 something or whatever. So like, do you just want to, so what happened last year is a lot of people were entering hoping they could go. And that was taking away spots from people that could go. And by the time they dropped out, I was like 2 weeks out, 1 week out. And these people that were on 60-person wait lists were unavailable. And so we sold out all these events that never had 200 people show up. So it was kind of a really disheartening way, because it's really high and everyone sees it a certain way. And you have this big excitement on registration day, but then on tournament day, you're like, oh, where's the other 40 people? And
that happened to me last year. I tried to register for that Chickamauga event, and so I got called into a meeting at work, like right when registration opened, and I was like, oh man, I missed it. So I got on the wait list, and then by the time it came back around, I think it was a couple weeks out, and I had already made
Yeah.
plans with my wife that weekend. So
Yeah,
it's like,
and
man,
that's not the intent, and that was
yeah,
never, a lot of people think that like we sold out Toledo Bend in 20 seconds last year, and we sold out Santee Cooper in less than a minute. That's not what happened last year. Toledo Bend stayed open for like, I don't know, 10, 11 days. And then we opened up Santee Cooper and it was open for 3 days. But like once Toledo Bend, like it kind of hit like 170. And then people were like, hey, it's about to sell out. It's about to sell out. And people were like, what? Sell out? And then all of a sudden, like in day, it was just gone. And then Santee kind of had the same thing going on because it was like, around 100. And then people started talking about selling out. And it was like 140, 160 gone. It was just like that. And it was
yeah,
kind of crazy. So it was like, oh, we need to change how we do this. So we went
yeah,
back and we're like, all right, we're going to have registration dates for each event. And we just kind of put it together in the moment and it kind of worked, but we wanted to allow ourselves to kind of change that a little bit. And, it's funny because there's a lot of speculation about the Florida event not being sold out yet. And for me, that's awesome. Like, it's awesome. There were 3
it's
people that
working like it
registered in the
should.
last
Yeah,
3 days. And like, we're about to hit 140. And like, we don't need our events to hit 225 to be considered a success. The host community is so excited about the numbers that we're bringing. It's the largest kayak event that's ever been there. Our average needs to be, for us to kind of hit certain goals for the TOC, we want to average around 150. And I feel like if we would go anything above 150 in our first event, we're well on our way. We haven't gone to Florida ever for a reason. Florida's really far to get to if you're not from Florida. And even if you're
yeah,
in Florida, there's places that are not that close to where we're going. And, a big part of our tournament series are people that travel 5, 6, 7 states away. And so if you go even further away, that makes it challenging for them. So despite everybody's desire to want to fish Florida in the winter, it can be just challenging to get there, especially when you're looking at a full tournament season because you have to take that many more days on the front and back end. So, it's not by no means is us not selling out a failure. It seems like a lot of the things that we've done with the registration process have worked. And until the last day to register, which I want to say is February 10th, you can register to that date. So if you are on the fence or you were in a meeting or you missed the opening time, you can still get in. If you decide like, oh, all right, my buddies are going and I can go now, or, your weekend plans change, you can still get in. So like, that's the idea of it. It's an open and we want it to be open for everybody. There's nothing more disheartening when I get a DM or something. It's like, someone's like, hey man, I really want to come fish the tournament. Can I come? And it's like, no, we're sold out, but you can get on a wait list. No, that person was ready
yeah,
to go. They were excited, and I'm going to put them on an arbitrary list that like they can't even see. So that's one of those things that now I don't know how the rest of the events are going to go. Santee Cooper, Seminole, Caddo, and Bistineau. There's just no telling. If you want to go at noon that day that it opens, you probably ought to register. But hopefully, it doesn't sell out in 5 minutes or 10 minutes every time, and it sits open for a couple weeks and lets
I think
people kind of decide.
I
yeah,
think your move with the registration with the your refund policy is going to help. It's a phenomenon my wife always tells me I have called FOMO, fear of missing out, which is, and I thought that from after the first one that I saw sell out, and then like you said, not everybody showed up. And I was like, well, right there. I mean, people just didn't want to not be able to say that they made it in the registration. So I think that your refund policy probably will help curb. I mean, I think you'll still easily hit your 200 anglers. I don't think that's going to be a problem, but I think maybe it'll slow down the chaos to that point.
Yeah, I mean, we only hit 200 and had 200 in tournaments, I think 2 times last year, but we sold out 5 events. So, like, it's kind of wild to think about, but it obviously needed some work and it got rid of the enter first, figure it out later kind of mentality. And
yeah,
hopefully that allows more specific people. And then, the other thing that we wanted to do is, we let our TOC anglers register early, so they were able to register for any event they wanted to during the first week. And so there's already people in some of these events. And then after, before the Seminole registration, what we're going to do, we're going to take the top 35 in our Angler of the Year race and give them a 24-hour window to register before the rush too. So folks that are performing well don't have to worry about missing that. And that was one of the things that I felt the most last year is people that won an event, they didn't know they were going to support the series until they won that event, and the next two events were sold out for them. And so instead of like really having a shot at Angler of the Year, they really just won an event. And it's like, well, that's not really how that's supposed to go. And so, and it's not perfect. We'll evolve this structure as it makes sense. I'd really like to have a way where before the season starts, I could take, a $50 buy-in to AOY, and those people are committing to 4 events, and I give them a password and they can go sign up to any 4 events that they want. But right now our structure and our systems don't really have an easy system for that. And so, but that's kind of the direction we want to go. And if you want to commit to 4 or 5 events with us, we should have a way for you to do that before noon on the day that registration goes out. But like we were talking about earlier, things have to evolve, and we have to be, it's not just the anglers. And I know people want to blame the anglers, but it's organizations and people and staff,
technology,
some of that stuff has to evolve too, to allow us to do the things that we want to do. And sometimes there's unforeseen setbacks. And as an organization or as a director, anytime you have an unforeseen setback, the biggest thing that you want to do is never to let those things trickle down to the anglers. Like that's your goal as a tournament director, is to never let the other 180 people see what happened between these two. You want to handle it. You don't want it to change their thoughts of the event. So, when we have stuff that we've got to handle or that restructure within an organization, things like that, we don't want that stuff to be felt. And so that's the kind of the stuff that we're working through this year, and having to kind of work with a little bit.
Sweet. Well,
that's awesome.
Garrett, what's your first question?
Well, this one has to do with the off limits periods. So you guys are going to off limits periods 3 weeks out, or 21 days, I think it's how it's worded.
Really? We did that?
Yeah.
That's in the rules?
No, I didn't see that in there.
So one of the biggest things that we've heard, and so prior to this year, we didn't have any off limits. We had like guide rules and stuff like that, but part of it is like we didn't have any off limits. And so a part of kind of evolving a little bit, saying, okay, well, you don't get to go every week for 3 weeks or every weekend for 3 weeks. There's a period of time that the lake is essentially off limits. Whether that makes a difference or not, we'll see this year. But essentially what it is, it's a 14-day period that you can't fish before the 7-day practice window. And in our rules, we use the term practice period. And so 90% of the people, what they think is that everyone's going to show up and practice for 7 days. But the way that really reads, and the way that I believe our anglers will use that, is they more of a window. And I think the reason, I think it's easy to say, well, it should be 3 days, or it should be 4 days, or 2 days. Well, the thing is my 3 days might be different than your 3 days. And that's the difference in our series, in our sport, and it is an open level. Then we're really, kind of trying to accommodate for those people. I know a lot of people that their only time pre-fishing our events is the 1 or 2 days of the previous weekend. And if that weekend is out, they don't have an opportunity to fish. And so that's one of the big things for us, is that previous weekend needed to be a part of it, based on the feedback that we received from our anglers, or a lot of our anglers. And the thing about it is now there are limitations on that weekend. Last year, you could roll up to the lake on that Saturday or Sunday in a bass boat and mark stuff. Well, now you can't do that. So really, that's kind of putting more restrictions in, but it's a 7-day period. I feel like there might be time down the road where we evaluate a smaller period, but I feel like that weekend before is an extremely important weekend for our anglers to be able to navigate a season full of tournaments and things like that. You know, if you have a tournament close to you, 2 to 4 hours, you might run and go do that on the weekend before, but not take off time the week of, so you can use that time for an event that's 10 hours away. So it's just the balance. And, you know, we're an open series. I mean, we get some folks that literally pull their camper and they take their wife and their dog and they camp out and they fish 3 hours on Saturday, and then it's raining on Sunday, so they just hang out in the camper, and then they fish a couple hours on Monday, and then they really give it a big effort on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then they rest a little bit on Thursday. And it's like, that's the only event they're going to fish all year. That's what
It's
is
like an
special to them.
experience for them.
And it is. And this, in order for us to have 200, 225 anglers, we kind of need to have all those folks. And in order for somebody to go home with a $10,000 check, there needs to be people that are okay losing $295. And having those people there and making sure that we're accommodating their desire to invest and come in to fish a kayak tournament the way that it works for them is important. And it's part of the way that the first evolution of a practice period or a off limits period, it made it to that point.
And I think that what you just said really is the case, because like for me, I've actually never fished a Hobie, mostly because for the last 3 years the schedule has just never worked for me. But I've always had the thought in my mind, like, you know, it happened to me in a KBF event last year. Like, people were fishing in Florida a month before I even got there and gave it my 3 days of practice. And I don't know, it just starts to go in your head. Like, I mean, I can't beat somebody that can be on the water for a month before the event. I mean, I could figure it out in a month for sure. So, you know, I didn't feel like it was a level playing field. And this off limits period, like, really speaks to me. Like, okay, sure, they've got tons more experience on the water than I do. But I mean, now that week during those weather scenarios, we all have the same time. And I mean, there's not really a lot of outside variables to that. It's like we're all going to be on that same time punch. Like, this is your time, this is all you've got. So now, like, you know, now that's got me like refired up for it. Like, okay, I'll probably still suck, but now I'll at least try.
Yeah,
like,
there's a lot of places, if you give me a month, I probably still couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, Del Hollow for this guy right here.
And sometimes more time hurts people. You know, I've had anglers say, "Oh, I wish I didn't spend so much time on the water. If I'd have just fished a couple days, I wouldn't have, you know, messed with my mind so much or messed with my fish so much." And, you know, I think there's a lot of variables there. And is this the perfect solution? No, but it's the first step. And I think that's the biggest thing for people to understand, to go from no practice rules or off limits to like a very tight window is a really drastic change that impacts more people than I think most folks realize. And so, you know, let's take a step before we take a huge leap in some scenarios. And I think this was a worthy effort for us, and we'll see how it plays out. And I think the biggest thing is, like, once again, it's not a required 7-day practice period. I would say very few people at very few of our locations will fish every single day in that practice period.
You'll be wore out by the tournament if you do that.
You know, and a lot of those people take off the last day or two when they do. And so, like, that's a good thing. You're getting people off of the water on those last days when all the extra people come in. So I think really spreading it out is a really good thing. And I think people won't feel that as much. But I will say, if you've never fished a Hobie tournament, there are countless examples of people that have showed up and only pre-fished on Friday and won the tournament. And some of those were in paddle kayaks. So, like, don't just be intimidated out of the gate. Like, you still got to catch them on Saturday and Sunday, and whatever someone did the days before that can only help or hurt them on Saturday and Sunday, but they don't put them in the boat. So, you know, it's my favorite thing when someone on the stage is like, "Yeah, I showed up on Friday and found a little thing," and now they're holding, $10,000 check. So I think
Man,
that's really cool.
we had a number of those last year that we followed on on this show doing the tournament recap. And there was I couldn't tell you what month, but me and Dan, it was 4 weeks in a row. Nobody we had on the show, first, second, and third place, had pre-fished or ever been there before. Like, it was nuts all over the country. Guys just one and done in it, like insane. I'm not that lucky, but
Yeah.
it's
Maybe someday
impressive.
you gotta keep pushing your
I know.
chances.
I gotta get rid of a bunch of these other hobbies. Is what it is. I gotta put
Yeah.
more time on the water. Well, what you got next, Garrett? Roll on down your questions.
So then after that, you got pre-approved. You're going moving to pre-approved launches, or like a set list of launches that you can use on a body of water. Let me see how it's actually working.
Yeah, well, it kind of allows us to pretty much however we want to present the places you have to fish from is kind of how it reads. Essentially, what
Yeah.
we're going to do is we're going to have a list and hopefully a Google map if I can figure out how to do it. That pretty much is a link, and you're going to know the 10 or 40 or however many places on that particular body of water that we have deemed as a public and usable launch for the series. And the big thing for that, one of the biggest things for that, is a safety thing.
Yeah.
And it allows us to kind of know where people are. It doesn't put someone in a vulnerable position for trespassing or anything like that. And, and our anglers, I mean, there's been some incredible stories of, pulling a pro angler through
For a
whatever.
mile and a half or
Yeah,
something
it's
like
like
that.
that's a great story, but it's not that probably shouldn't be the deal in this thing.
Yeah.
And I think that I think there's a lot of gray in that, and I think anglers were allowed to exploit the gray at times, and we were understanding of that based on how the words were written. But I think that as it grows, as the money gets higher, having a better kind of constant for the competitors is a really important desire for us. And it's a little more work on the front end, but I mean, I don't think people really understand how many times people are like, "Hey, is this spot legal?" or "Hey, is this spot legal?" And it's
Yeah.
like, probably
Like, it's
not.
tiring answering all those questions.
So
I mean,
here's your
even on the
list.
local level, you're like,
Yeah,
oh my god. Like,
Yeah, I
here's
mean,
your
I've thought
list,
about
and
doing that for some of our events because of how many questions I get. I'm just like, God, I'm just gonna put out a list, and you can only use those.
yeah. And so, I know that there's a lot of people that are disappointed in that just because they think that they've got their honey hole slide in on their home lake.
Mhm.
And like, that's cool for practice. That's cool for your local events. That's cool for anything. But when we're bringing the big show to the area, um, that's
step
not
your
cool
game
for
up.
that. It's just
Yeah.
a little
Yeah,
different. If you want to go fish an area, you're going to have to launch at the closest legal launch for it.
and make the
You know, what
sacrifice, making the run to get to
something
it, I
I
guess.
talked about with Steve is like there's a lot of misconception. People just think right out of the gate you're going to give them like 4 boat ramps. Like, you're going to pull up to Pickwick and be like, "All right, here's 4. Good luck." And I'm like, somebody
And
actually was like, "Man, you think they'll only have like 5?" And I was like, "You're serious? You think someone's going to put 200 kayak guys on 5 boat ramps, like on a smaller body? No. Like, they've thought about this. Like,
So that kind of brings up a question or I thought of, like, so how far out are you posting, or do you only send it to the anglers that register, or is
no,
it?
so the whole theory on this, and a lot of other tournament anglers have reached out, or tournament directors have reached out, and they're like, "Man, we will help you with lists when you come to this state. We'll start a collection of these things."
Yeah,
So, and part of it right now is gathering the data and putting it together. Vinny over at Queen City's been doing it for years. He's a master at it. I've been leaning on Vinny a little bit with it, and he's great on that. So. We'll have the Florida launches probably up today or tomorrow, or not to. Well, I don't know when this is going to air, but hopefully this week. But in theory, we want to have our launches published in the event page with all the other details. So it's just there and it's available. But it's not. I mean, it gives you that information, but the reality is those places are there. Like, they're already there. Like, it's not like you're going to be like, "Oh, that place is allowed." Like, it's going to be commonly known spots. So like if you're going to go practice on an area before the off limits period, it isn't necessarily like, it's not the end all be all that you're aware of what that list is, but our goal is to get it out sooner. It's just a lot of things happened crazy quick with the Florida event. And so it just hasn't come together yet, but we already have the list for Santee, since Vinny does that. I've already got half the list for Caddo and Bistineau. And then we'll have Seminole before too long too. So we plan on having the list out before the event goes live, but you know, realistically, we're probably going to have the Florida event a little later, just because it happened so quick this year.
Yeah. So something, I wish I could name the program right now. I have a buddy that's a GIS major, and his company has the software that he can make. He's made like apps. He's done it for our local club, where like you were talking about needing Google Maps, you know, like doing something with Google Maps. Like this little thing just pulls up an app that literally you can just click on. In like it'll
a
say
lot of
you
those
could
are
click
on
on
like the TWRA sites and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he makes them for our state for kayak fishing, and you pull up, it shows the event, you click on the event, you click launch, and then it can go through, and every one you click opens you up goes to a Google map. You can do your overlays, and it's really cool. So there's definitely the tech there for it.
Send me information.
I will get you in touch with him, and he can tell, because I couldn't even remember, but it is a sick little program.
Like some of those lists are going to be pretty long for what you're going to have to.
Well,
and
like, you know, I don't
know if you can see that.
Yeah, Kentucky and
that's Kentucky Lake.
Yeah, and there might be some people that are not happy about boundaries and stuff on that lake this time around. So we'll dive in on that when that event comes out. But I just feel like, you know, the other part of this event is safety and accountability. So, you know, having anglers at least in an area together, or knowing that you saw so-and-so at a ramp, it's a good thing, and it's not a bad thing. When no one's never seen so-and-so and they still haven't seen him and he hasn't checked out and all that stuff, like it becomes a, you know, a safety and a liability thing that we're trying to tighten up a little bit. And then, you know, we invest on putting you know, a media boat on the water, and like we want to get people's pictures and we want to get people's stories, and
can't do that when you're in 6 inches of water 15 miles away.
yeah.
No, I think on top of everything you said that it's going to help, I think it's going to take out a bunch of the speculation. Like, you can't be like, oh, he was up so and so. Nope, he kicked your ass on the same body of water you were on this time, buddy.
Well, and if he was up so-and-so, he launched right next to you and got there. So, like, if that's the deal, you know, like, that's the thing. And so, like,
you just put in more work than you did.
And, you know, I think it's easy to, you know, pinpoint certain things that have happened in the last year. But as tournament directors on the national scale, we've been dealing with some of this stuff for years. And we've been trying to figure out what the balance of it was, and the direction and the timing of it. And I think some things just came to a head mixed with the overall like numbers. And we were like, you know, if we all kind of take this approach together, it will help us all eliminate some of the things that have been challenging for us as directors. And it's not just one person, and it's not just one body of water, and it's not just this or that. It's not just one organization. These are things that have been occurring in kayak fishing for a really long time, whether they were right, wrong, or indifferent. And like we're trying to make things better as we can. And if people are going to complain about one thing, you know, be careful about complaining about the solution to it, you know? So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, do you got time for any other ones, or?
Well, you know, it's getting kind of close to tip off. Cat's at handy, but I feel like if you want to hit a couple more questions, I mean, one of the biggest things that I've seen is the communication stuff.
You know,
I was going to say if we hit on one more, that's the one I'd hit on.
Yeah,
you know, and we'll read the rules. So it says during the tournament hours of each day, which is first launch to fishing concludes. So essentially, you have like an 8.5 hour window that this applies. 8.5 hours. Contestants may not share information about locating or catching fish on tournament waters. So you just can't share information during 8.5 hours of tournament day. While you're fishing, while the tournament's going on, you cannot share information. Even if somebody is next to you, it's not a phone call. It's not you can say it, but you can't call it. in general, you cannot share information during that time frame. And we have some of the best and caring and giving anglers in our sport that you could ever imagine. And we have people in the TOC that didn't even know each other. They're like, "Hey, bud, go on that bank over there and throw this whatever. I'm not culling anymore." And it's like,
Yeah.
that's awesome. But is that necessarily like how a competition needs to play out? And we decided that, and there's been a lot of things that have been talked about and spoken about, and I feel like a lot of folks really wanted to eliminate some of the side chatter, whether it's in good intention, or whether it's designed to be kind of, let's go do this together type thing. I'm not here to speculate on what the intentions are, but if you can go out there during 8 hours and you can do your thing, and you can talk to your buddy the night before that's in the tournament, and you can talk to him the night in between, and you can share notes if you have to, if that's your game. But for 8.5 hours, it's you and the information that you have, applying it to that body of water. So that's that one rule. The other rule is, during the tournament hours of each day, which is first launch to fishing concludes, an electronic device may not be used to speak to anyone about tournament waters, fishing strategies, techniques, etc. And then it goes in to say the device can still be used as a means of communication to BOS staff, social media updates, safety checks, ride coordination, and or work and family emergencies or urgent matters. So on that note, if you're talking to your dad and your dad's like, "Hey man, the wind's coming, pick up that spinner bait,"
Yeah.
like, that's not allowed. Your dad's just being a good dad. And he didn't need to tell you that. He's been telling you that for 30 years. So, you just need to kind of handle it yourself for that 8.5 hours. Now, outside of that 8.5 hours, you can do your thing. Now, if your dad calls and says, "Hey man, mom is still at the grocery store. I'm worried sick about her," and he calls you first, then you can pick it up and be like, "All right, Dad, just drive up there and check on mom," whatever it is you need to say. Or if your wife wants to call and check on you, like, that's okay. But do you need to be on the phone for your wife for 30, 40, 50 minutes? Do you need to accidentally be like, "Well, the fishing's not doing that"? She's like, "Well, throw that little pink Ned rig thing I like," and so like you don't, those are things that don't need to be happening. And so, like, it's not taking away the opportunity to communicate. It's taking away the opportunity to gain a competitive advantage through communication outside of the tournament. So that's really what the goal of that was. And sometimes that stuff's not necessarily a competitive advantage. It's just, it can be a distraction too, and it can really help, and if he picks up that pink Ned rig thing and throws it for the next 45 minutes, he might not catch any fish. But if he'd have kept throwing that jig like he knew he was going to catch them on, then he's going to get that one more fish. It's like, you just never know. But ultimately, we're just trying to eliminate the unnecessary sharing of information, both from people inside the tournament and outside the tournament. These aren't uncommon rules in competitive fishing. They're just now in ours. So I think once people read it and understand it, and then if they need clarification, that's what we're here for. And, we don't want to ruin someone's experience. We don't want to get them in trouble with their dad or their wife or whatever. But, it's like, it's just 8.5 hours. And and it's an emergency, you can still talk to them. And like, if you rode to a tournament with your buddy and y'all are sharing the same trailer and you put in at the same ramp and your buddy goes up the creek and you go out the creek, now y'all can't talk in the middle of the day and be like, "Hey man, they're up in the head of this creek, come on up here." "Hey man, I'm catching them on a wacky worm," or whatever like that. But if you need to be like, "Hey man, I'm getting off the water, I'm leaving, you can meet me at the ramp," or, "I'll come pick you up." That's ride coordination. We want the anglers to be able to do that, but you can't be like, "Hey man, I didn't catch him on this. I didn't catch him on that. I didn't catch him on that. I didn't catch him on that. I caught one fish on this and I'm going to go ahead and leave now." Like, there's a difference. And so, it's just trying to avoid the unnecessary sharing of information during tournament hours that can affect the outcome in that 8.5 hours of time on the water.
No, and I like it. I mean, a lot of people that have a problem with it, like, maybe you've never watched any of the bass fishing on TV before. You ever notice that those guys aren't calling each other asking for help? Like,
Yeah, they're
they're
not allowed to
pretty
do that
strict
kind of
on.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
You
don't check
know,
their social media. They
yeah.
it's
And
pretty
those guys can
straightforward.
talk on the water, and sometimes they'll like say, "Hey, man," and like I think there's a balance, and we maybe we went too far on the water, but I think it's really I think it's really easy to have a good hard line and say this is what we expect, and there's not a scenario that it's okay and a scenario that's not. You just can't share information on tournament waters during the 8.5 hour tournament.
And there's ways. I don't mean ways around it, like exploiting it, but like you could roll up on somebody, and there could be nonverbal cues where you're obviously having a bad day. They're obviously not, and they just kind of roll out, and you're like, okay, cool, appreciate it. Like
Yeah.
there's
Well, and you roll up on somebody and you see that they're throwing, whatever they're throwing, like, and then they catch fish. Well, like, okay, well, now you know that in that area they're catching. It's like there are things like that out there, but
Yeah.
it's a hey bud, come on over here, and it's a throw the spinner bait right up on the weed edges. It's like that kind of stuff. It's if someone sees it, if someone applies it, that's one thing, but the direct communication and sharing of information is just something we wanted to really kind of get ahead of before it got any more out of line than it's perceived to be.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
I think you've done a good job, man. I think y'all. I think it's
And
a
here's the
good
deal,
set.
guys. No one, rules, when rules change, people don't like them. I mean, that's just how it is. They
Yeah.
ask for it, they beg for it, and then they see it and they're like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's crazy. And I've been one of those anglers and I get it. I've begged for things not to change. I've just never understood this or never, and it's like, well, okay, now we're all just fishing within the same boundary. It doesn't really matter that much. And if it bothers you that much, then maybe you were doing something that bothered a lot of other people. And so like that's something to kind of consider. And and maybe you were doing something that people were turned off about the sport of because of. And so
Yeah.
those are the things that we're trying to work through. And like I said, we change our rules every year. It's just this year we had some bigger ones and people made a big fuss or made big excitement about it. And that's okay. We had to have something to talk about the last month and a half.
That's
But
right.
we just, every year the NFL changes the rules. Everybody changes rules every year and sports evolve. And we're in an evolving process and these rules are going to come and some of them are going to go. And hopefully people are here for it and ready to see it through and understand that our attempt and our desires through it. And, we'll step back and we'll see if it was right or wrong or not. And, we'll continue to make changes and hopefully they're all going the right direction because ultimately this is an incredible sport and we love our series and we want to share it with as many people as possible. And that's really the goal of everything we do. It's not to take away your little honey hole slide. It's to make this thing is accommodating to as many people as possible so we can all have a big time and a fair competition.
And to circle back around, guys, this is how we get to an elite series. And this is what everybody wants. These are the kind of changes that have to happen. Somebody has to take the step forward to see if it works. And
to that point, these are very, very relaxed and intermediate rules. If you want to go read some rules, go look at the Bass Opens and go look at the Bass Elites. And know that they have rules about scuba diving. They have rules about helicopters flying over.
Yeah, you can't fly around over the area or something like that.
Those are rules because someone did it.
Yep.
Like someone did it. And like we have rules because someone did it. Like there's people who've been around a long time. They're like, oh, that's the Scotch rule, and that's this rule, and that's the Drew rule, and that's the whatever rule. And at the end of the day, like those people didn't break rules, but we've evolved the sport because of things that they did do. It doesn't make them a bad person. It just means that we use that example to try to work on improving our sport. And sometimes we learn or we can apply things prior, and sometimes we have to wait till something happens to apply. But that's all we're doing.
Well, man, I think it's going to be a great year, and I think that y'all are doing a great job, and the changes are. I don't think it's going to hurt your attendance at all. I think that you'll still have the killer following, and I think it's going to be a great year again. Just from talking to Steve, we know that there's going to be a bunch of similarities in these rule changes across the board. So I think kayak fishing is just going to have a badass 2023, and I know we've ran over a little bit longer, but I'm so glad that we was able to get you on finally, man. It's been a pleasure talking to you, letting you, talk about you for sure. I mean, honestly, my favorite part's just hearing where it came from. How long you've been involved in the whole kayak fishing world, and
One of the
just
real
talking.
OGs here.
Really, yeah, and I think that's a testament to why you run that series so well, or that series is ran so well. Is you've been in it for a while. You didn't just hop in and say I want to run a tournament. Like you knew what you wanted out of a tournament because you fish tournaments. Like you know it.
Yeah, you understand it kind of from every level, every progression of it too.
Yeah, guys. I mean, I feel really blessed to have the opportunities that I had in the kayak and the fishing industry prior to that. I mean, I've run boat tournaments. I've sat there and bumped fish on a golden rule and put them in a basket, and wrote weights on the board, and penalized guys for not dropping their poker chip in the coffee tin and on time. Like the perspective on that kind of stuff is really valuable. And I can. Most people want me to come in and talk about tournament stuff or specifically BOS. I really appreciate you guys having the opportunity for me to share kind of the beginnings of that stuff, because that's the stuff that I don't really get to talk about as much. Most people don't really care about what happened 10, 11 years ago. But that's the kind of stuff that paved the way for the day, and the stuff that I love and I'm passionate about, and the people that helped me and helped the sport along the way. And I just really feel fortunate for the way things kind of came together and all the support. And I want to thank guys like yourselves that give folks like me and Steve and other guys and girls in this sport a platform to share their story and share their stuff like that. Everyone's like, oh, it's another podcast, or whatever. Everyone's doing the podcast, but those are opportunities for people, and you guys are sacrificing your time to hear what other people have to say and to share their story with others. And that's awesome, guys, and I appreciate it. And if
So do we, man. I
happy
definitely
to
do.
come on
Yeah, I
anytime.
appreciate that.
You guys want me to come on for sure.
Sure, man. I'm sure like we're changing up a little bit of the direction, and how we do things, getting a little more detailed in our little niche of the podcasting world. And I've already got things wrote down to hit you up later in the year for updates and talk about some of your events going into championship time. And
Yeah.
I always keep part of our shows paying attention to the tournaments all around the country. So if I see your name pop up on some of the Bass Nation stuff, I'll have you on to talk about whipping everybody's ass on the water. So well, man,
I'm
I
sure we'll
appreciate
see
it.
it.
Get to the game. I know you're ready to go. I appreciate it again so much. And good luck this year, and I'm sure we'll have you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Go
Appreciate
Cats.
y'all. Yeah, go Cats.
Oh God. All right, we'll see you.
All right, see ya.
Awesome show. That was really
That's
good. That was everything I was hoping to get out of that show. I wanted to know more about AJ before just him having the spill info on Hobie, the BOS series, because you can kind of go anywhere and get most of that information. He's very versed in it. He does really good captains meetings, really good tournament coverage. He covers it, so everybody knows about that side of it. So it was cool to talk about the other stuff before we get to the nitty gritty.
Yeah, he's definitely got a very diverse background. I feel like in tournament fishing and just kayak fishing, and it goes back further than before I was even thinking of fishing in a kayak. That he was already out there, kind of
Yeah,
pioneering.
he was already miles ahead, man.
Yeah,
and that I knew I wanted to talk to him even more. I got to meet him in person. We've talked on the phone a few times about other stuff, dealing with Hobie and shop stuff. But he, for anybody listening that's in the Tennessee, Alabama, general area, coming up February 3rd, 4th, and 5th, they have the Tennessee Boat and Fishing Expo in Lebanon, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And I met him there last year. He came and worked. We had a big Hobie booth set up. He came and worked that with us, and I actually sat down and ate lunch with him. And I was like, oh wow, there's a lot more to this guy than just
Yeah.
I run a
Just the
tournament
tournament
series.
director. Yeah.
And shame on me for not thinking that was the case. But you hold, when you see these people, especially on that level, you hold them up to like a different level. It's like you're talking to kind of like to a celebrity kind of. But uh, no, and ever since then, I was like, okay, when I will find a dead moment in his busy life that we can, give him a chance to talk about where he came from and what it took to make the Hobie Open, Hobie BOS, what it is. And I think him and Steve's running Bassmaster, AJ's running
Mhm.
Hobie. They're great friends. I think that's going to give that bump up to Bassmaster that it needs to get that sour taste out of everybody's mouth, as Steve said.
Yeah.
And then working together, it's going to be like watching the Bass and the FLW, back in the day. It's pick your
Grow
poison or do
together
them
pretty
both,
much.
like do your thing. And who knows? I remember that there was some talk that Boyd Duckett and MLF are, you know, dabbled around and interested. I haven't heard anything else from it, but we have a couple standout years with these two guys running these huge series, and I'm sure it would, and chance to make money. That's the way it'll get
Yeah.
looked at. Chance for
Well, I'm
exposure.
pretty sure they had an FLW kayak event, like a couple years ago.
Yeah, KBF was partnered with FLW before
Yeah.
MLF bought it out, and they had a pro series that was the FLW Cup.
Yeah.
Our very own Brian Schiller fished in it a couple times. He did okay. He's a good angler.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, you got anything to
So,
add to it? I don't have tournament results. Tourney X is still down. I guess I'm gonna have to give Dwayne a call. Tourney X is working, but the way we get all the information for our tournaments is you go into the archive tournament tab, and that's not pulling up, so I can't, fish through the tournaments in
no, I
numerical
expect
order.
you to go through every single one that
Well,
happens. And
you are going to be sadly disappointed when it doesn't happen. So, but yeah, anything else to hit on the show, or any thoughts or anything towards what we've talked about?
I don't know. I really appreciate what AJ's doing for the sport of kayak fishing and keeping pushing it forward. And like, I mean, over the last decade, he's been doing that. So
Yeah.
it's great having him on and getting to hear
Oh
how
yeah.
that's progressed over the last
Well,
12.
hopefully, I hope he gets to. Maybe we can swing a hole in the schedule, and he can pop in at the Paddle and Fin event on Del Hollow. It'd be fun. Have him
Yeah,
out
so he can
there.
take more money.
In a perfect world, I'd love to see, because Riser fishes it every year if there's no schedule conflicts,
Yeah,
and so thus far there hasn't been. Riser usually does good. I think he's won
as
two of them,
expected.
because I know he
Yeah,
won the first one with a giant smallmouth, and then he won the second one that he won the kayak in. Um,
it struggled a little bit this past year.
mhm.
Yeah,
But we're going at
gave
a
us everybody else a chance.
but I'd love to see AJ and Riser and Russ. Russ has signed up before, but he like messed his neck up or something and couldn't fish with us. But I hope he gets out there. So if you don't have anything going on, I've actually, real quick before we get off here, I pulled it up to share it if it's still there. Yep, here I'm gonna do a little screen share here. So for everybody that's checking us out on YouTube right now, the graphic is up and you can see it. I'll read it off. So the Del Hollow Open, April 22nd and 23rd. It's $100 entry fee, which includes a big bass. It's on Tourney X. We got a bunch of great sponsors: Dubro Fishing, Pelican Cases and Coolers, Dark Horse Tackle, Pine Ridge Archery, Yak Gadget, Ace Adventure Resort, Douglas Spin Cast, and the biggest one, the host, Eastport Marina. Richard and the guys out there, they put us up in the really nice barn,
They're good
and we have
peoples.
we do a pretty, I would say, high level venue um for it to be a, smaller, I mean, I'd say smaller scale event. Every year the numbers are getting better. It's
Yeah,
Tennessee's got a busy fishing schedule, so we've been trying to work into it to make it more appealing, and Eastport's a little bit out of the way, but it's a fun event, man. We feed you. Hey, we did pizza. So since AJ's not doing pizza anymore,
yeah,
we're the
you
place
have
to
to
get the
come.
pizza at the tournament. We got giveaways. We do big checks, live music, beer. We have We got the kegs rolling around at the
Maybe that was my
weigh-in.
problem the first day. I had a few too many of those, and then
Yeah,
second day,
I think we were doing like $1 a piece. I can't remember, but it
yeah,
was a very affordable, very cold beer. So
yeah,
we hope to see everybody there. We thank everybody again for this episode. This is probably going to close it out for the director stuff. We do have a new show aired on the Paddle and Fin Network called The Director's Cut, and he'll be doing a lot of the tournament directors from around the country. But being that we are the tournament show, I kind of feel like that it takes priority that me and you get to talk to Steve and Chad and AJ. We hadn't got to
yeah,
have Chad on yet. We came back from break and the time just didn't really add up, but we'll try to get Chad on at some point this season to talk about
yeah.
KBF and the changes and how he's doing, relocating to Huntsville, and he's my neighbor now. So
Got a lot of big things happening all at once.
oh yeah, tons of stuff. But yeah, I think next week we should have the winners on from the KBF Trail Series in Polk County, Florida.
Awesome.
And then the week after that, we'll probably have the 10 winners on. So a couple great shows coming up. Hope everything works out. We thank everybody for being with us, and we hope everybody comes back and listens to the next one.
Yeah, we'll see you there.
Heck yeah. So we'll see you next time, everybody. Peace.